Is Rafael Fiziev the right man to replace Dan Hooker? And loads of people are losing their heads online saying, Sean O'Malley, does he deserve a shot at the world title next? At the great Jose Aldo has got another fight booked. Is it the right fight for Jose? Is he done? I personally don't think he is. Welcome to the MMA Show. I'm Adam Catterall. It is a pleasure to once again be in your company. We've got a new co-main event for UFC 313. Is Rafael Fiziev the right man to replace Dan Hooker? Justin Gaethje, Dan Hooker is off. We're all absolutely gutted because that fight had us all salivating at the beautiful brutality that they were going to serve up. It isn't to be because Dan Hooker has hurt his hand and he's off to rest, recuperate, and hopefully be back sometime in the summer. Now, most people would look at that and say, just push the fight back. But you're dealing with Justin Gaethje. Justin Gaethje don't push fights back. He's in camp. He's ready to go. Doesn't matter who stood across from him. So is Rafael Fiziev the right man to stand across from him, given the fact that they've done it before? My answer to the question is yes. And it's because they've done it before that he probably gets the nod over some other worthy contenders. Now, we've seen the tweet from Justin Gaethje, who's listed a lot of fighters, and he's said that they all said no. I don't know whether they said no. I don't even know whether half of this lot have actually been offered the contest on such short notice. We can only go off what Justin Gaethje is saying, but some of them don't make sense at this particular stage. Aiemann Zahabi, Charles Oliveira are highly likely to be fighting each other. That will highly likely be some type of eliminator for a shot at the title. So it doesn't make sense for them to step in on 9 days' notice to take on Justin Gaethje in a co-main event over 3 rounds at UFC 313. So let's eradicate them. You've also got the shadow of Ilia Topuria, because one of the other announcements that took place in February is that he's vacating his strap at 145 and he's going up to 155. That gets us all extremely excited as to what could be happening next for him. He is going to be in the picture, no doubt, with a Sarukian, with an Oliveira, or maybe even leapfrogging the both of them and getting the shot with Islam Makhachev. I personally think that whole conversation is going to develop once we know what's going on with the heavyweight title fight between John Jones and Tom Aspinall. Why that fight? Well, I think that fight in particular is being touted for International Fight Week. If it doesn't materialize for International Fight Week, we are going to need a suitable replacement. And I think there's nothing bigger and better in the UFC right now than Islam Makhachev versus Ilia Topuria. So I think that fight might materialize for that particular week. But all that is ifs, buts, and maybes at the moment. And on this show, we only deal in absolutes. So let's park those 3 potentials of stepping in at UFC 313 to the side, because I don't think they made any sense whatsoever. Some other names that got thrown up included Dustin Poirier. Now, of course, for every single fight fan, this is sexy because Poirier and Gaethje are 1-1. Last time out, it was Gaethje that delivered the knockout on Dustin Poirier for the BMF title. Oh, what a sensational finish to the fight that was. Dustin Poirier is now at that stage where he said, I'm only having one more. He's also been very vocal as to where he wants that one more to take place. He wants it in Louisiana. This obviously, UFC 313, is not taking place there. And also on 7 days' notice, do you really want Dustin Poirier's last dance to go out like that? No. With the career that he's had, he deserves the pomp and ceremony and the whole show to be purely about himself. So I have no problem whatsoever with that one not materializing, even though Dustin Poirier has come out and said, "Oi, don't be saying I turned it down, sunshine. I phoned the UFC and I said I was game." Doesn't surprise me whatsoever. It's Dustin Poirier, type of character he is. But for me, that's not the fight for this particular moment. Maybe down the line, but not right now. You've also got Renato Moicano that was in this conversation. Now, this would make sense if Moicano hadn't already stepped up last minute to take on Islam Makhachev. I think he served his time with those last minute step-ups. Let him have a rest, let him recuperate, let him come back, and let him have his next fight against the top contender, no doubt, but off a full camp. I think he's earned that right. So park him to one side. The only 2 real viable contenders at last minute notice were Mateusz Gamrot and Rafael Fiziev. Now, Gamrot is higher ranked than Fiziev, We know that he's got that wrestling base for Gaethje. I don't think Gaethje's too bothered about that. But it's what really turns the fans on, especially at this short notice, because let's think of the magnitude of the fight that you just lost. Everybody knew that Gaethje versus Hooker was going to be amazing. It can't not be. Just the way that both of those two guys fight, it was going to be absolutely sensational. In fact, I think it had more people excited about the co-main event than it did the actual main event. And the main event's got Alex Pereira in it, for crying out loud. When you lose a fight like that, you still need to keep the imagination of the fan. So what do? Running back something that they've already seen to keep them as interested is actually a stroke of genius. The co-main event for Leon Edwards and Kamaru Usman was the first time that Justin Gaethje and Rafael Fiziev danced together. And it was awesome. It was truly high-level mixed martial arts. Very little grappling, all taking place on the feet. They belted the living daylights out of each other. And it was sensational. Fiziev took the first round in sensational fashion. And then you've got Gaethje, who just turned up the pace, turned up the gas, and turned up the quality in the next 10 minutes. It was brutal. It was bloody. It was brilliant. I think we're going to get the exact same thing again, even on short notice. Fiziev is chomping at the bit for a fight. He is vocal. He has said himself that he's had 3 opponents offered to him. He said yes to them all, and they've all pulled out of negotiations. He can't get a fight. This is the opportunity that he's been waiting for. Sticks his hand up, flying across the world to take on the highlight reel himself, who we've not seen in action since last April. And the last time we saw him, he was face planted on the floor off the back of a right hand from Max Holloway. This is a big test for Gaethje. It's a big test for Fiziev. It's a fantastic fight for the fans. And for me, it is absolutely the right fight to make. The right replacement for Dan Hooker is Rafael Fiziev. Now, moving away from lightweight and down towards the 135ers and those bantamweights, because there's a conversation that has started to arise on social media regarding what could come next for Merab Dvalishvili, the champion, who was absolutely sensational at the start of the year against Umar Nurmagomedov. Dana White has insinuated that his next challenge could be the rematch with Sean O'Malley. And loads of people are losing their heads online saying, Sean O'Malley, does he deserve a shot at the world title next? The last time we saw him was in the Sphere and he was getting his back kissed by Merab himself, who won the championship on that particular occasion. Now, my answer to the question comes kind of twofold. Does Sean O'Malley deserve a shot at the world title next? No, is my answer. But does Merab Dvalishvili deserve the right to have a say in who he fights next? Yes. Now, normally, I won't condone this because for me, the UFC is about the best guys fighting the best guys. You fight the number one contender whenever you are the champion. That is what gets served to you. And you as the champion, like it or lump it, is how you've got to deal with it. But in this particular case, I don't think there is a number one contender in the bantamweight division right now. Let me explain to you. Merab took on Umar, who was supposed to be the guy, off the back of beating Sean O'Malley. Now, if you remember at the time, there was loads of calls for Sean's immediate rematch. It was a tight fight. It was a close fight. Listen, Merab won 4-1 or 3-2. I get that some of the rounds were tight and they could go either way. We had a couple of significant strikes in Sean's favour, but Merab won. Sean hadn't had the length of time as a champion to warrant an immediate rematch, and the number one contender was clear for everybody to see. Off the back of a great performance against Corey Sandhagen, Umar Nurmagomedov was stood there ready to go, wasn't he? And we all know how that fight played out. Umar for 10 minutes was brilliant. He really did ask some serious questions on Merab. But Merab then turned up the gas, and rounds 3, 4, and 5 was sensational to take it home. Who's the top contender now? Well, most people would probably say Petr Yan off the back of a decent run. But he's already been in with Merab. Yes, I know the fight was tight, but he lost. So does he deserve a shot at the world title next, given the fact that Merab's already beaten him? Is he not the same answer as Sean? I think he is. Now, for me, if you look at Merab's run, he's already beaten the number 1, he's already beaten the number 2, he's beaten the number 3. The number 4 is Corey Sandhagen, who was fallen short massively to Umar Nurmagomedov. And the number 5 is Davison Figueiredo, who's fallen short to Petr Yan. So Merab is in a really good position. He's the champion. He's dominant. He's taking out all the top contenders. And if he wants, let's say, a more commercially viable fight with Sean O'Malley next, then I think that makes an awful lot of sense, not only for the UFC, but also for Merab Dvalishvili, whilst the rest of the guys figure themselves out who the number one contender is. What I would do is this. I'd book Petr Yan and Umar Nurmagomedov. Because let's be honest, both of those guys have had the closest fights with Merab. Let them two fight each other. The winner of that fight now becomes the number one contender. In the meantime, run back Merab and Sean. Why not? Sean might do something incredible and beat Merab. He might. He's got the power to do it. And if he does, that maybe sets up the third fight between them. And we've got a trilogy on our hands, haven't we? But if Merab dominates him and wins again, we do have then Petr Yan or Umar Nurmagomedov standing in the wings, ready to go as the number one contender. So the answer to the question is quite simple. Do I think Sean deserves it? No, but I don't think anybody else deserves it either. Merab deserves the chance to have a say in who he fights next. And if the one that makes him the most amount of moolah is Sean O'Malley, let's go. Sticking with bantamweights, you may have seen that the great Jose Aldo has got another fight booked. Montreal is going to be the destination for UFC 315, and the King of Rio is heading there. He's taking on Aiemann Zahabi, number 11 versus number 13 in the bantamweight division. Is it the right fight for Jose? Well, first and foremost, this is the UFC. Doesn't matter who you are. If you're a ranked fighter and you want to continue fighting at the very top echelons of this game, you fight other ranked fighters. Or you fight rising contenders that want your slot. There are no gimmies. There's no layups. There's no easy ones. You fight the best guys. And Jose Aldo's built a career, let's be honest, on fighting the best guys. Now, I'm in a little bit of a rock and a hard place with this because I'm a massive Jose Aldo fan, as I'm sure you are. For me, when Jose Aldo came back to fight Jonathan Martinez in Brazil, that was the perfect fight. Young, rising contender, taking on the King of Rio in Brazil. This was supposed to be the one that finished off Jose Aldo's MMA career. But he was having none of it. He was absolutely sensational that night. He showed the young buck what it's all about, and he beat him up brilliantly in front of his people. That was the fight to put the crown on, put the gloves in the center of the octagon and say, so long, suckers, I've been amazing. But the problem is, when you roll back the years and you look absolutely amazing, at the age of 37, 38 as he was at the time, Jose Aldo then gets a love for that adulation from the crowd. Let's go again. Let's have another dance. And he did have another dance. And okay, yes, he lost and it was a split decision. It was a tight fight. And, people have had that argument as to whether it was or whether it wasn't. But the moment in Brazil against Martinez was the moment for me. Might not necessarily be the moment for Aldo, but it was the moment for me to say, there you go, Jose. You've had your swan song. Because MMA is a cruel game. We've seen it with all our heroes, all our legends. They go on a little bit too long. They're always the last to know. And then they go on these losing streaks, and it becomes hard for us as fans to keep watching them losing to people that, let's be honest, aren't fit to lace their gloves from 5-10 years ago. Now, Zahabi is a very, very talented fighter, and he's on a hot streak right now. Is this the right fight for Jose Aldo? Right now, yeah. Because Jose is actually not showing major signs of slowing down against the top 15 guys. That's who he's fighting at the moment. He's just lost a split decision in a tight, horrible fight. He won his last one. He's been away boxing for a bit as well, don't get me wrong. But this is kind of going to be the barometer as to whether Jose Aldo at 38 years of age is still doing it. Zahabi's 37. So there's no massive age gap between them. I know there's a massive experience gap with the amount of fights that Aldo's had compared to the amount of fights that Zahabi's had. And there's also a massive experience level of levels that they've actually fought at in the world of mixed martial arts. I actually think it's the right fight. Zahabi will have, given where he's based with his camp, will have a really good Canadian following. Jose Aldo's a legend. There's going to be a lot of noise in the room for the guys. I think they'll get a lot of pomp, a lot of ceremony, a lot of celebration. And it's an opportunity for Jose Aldo to show that he's still up there with the very best bantams in the world. Whatever happens in this, and listen, Jose Aldo is going to decide when he actually calls time on his career, but whatever happens in this fight, what I would like to see, and this is just me purely speaking as a fan, is Jose Aldo and Henry Cejudo to fight each other for their sign-off fights. How good would that be? Zahabi right now feels okay. Aldo versus Cejudo feels like the fight for both guys to say, thank you very much, MMA. Thanks for the cheese. We're off. And that leads me in nicely to speak about what happened throughout the course of February. Obviously, Henry's fight finished in controversial fashion against Song Yadong with the eye poke, and there's going to be plenty of conversations about eye pokes and how we punish them and how we solve them going forward. There's a lot brighter brains than me that can suggest things of how we can cure that particular situation. But from a Henry point of view, we can take that 15 minutes with the data against Song Yadong and conclude that at the top level, it's going to be very difficult for him to challenge for a title again. It was the worst decision in the world retiring after he beat Dom Cruz. He took 3 years off. He built his family. He built his businesses. He built his life. And I'm sure it was fruitful outside the octagon. But I think he's left a large percentage of brilliant Henry Cejudo and the mixed martial artist away from the octagon. It's just not there anymore. The speed ain't there. The fast twitch fibers aren't there. He's just half a beat off. And Song Yadong was well on his way to giving him a good hiding over that 25-minute period should it have played out that way. As I've said a moment or two ago, I think from a Henry point of view, take a breath, see what happens in the Aldo fight coming up, and then maybe do that dance. Legend against legend. See you in a bit, boys. That would be the perfect sign-off. For me, anyway, from Henry Cejudo and from Jose Aldo's point of view. There's also the conversation throughout the course of February as to where Israel Adesanya's at, because if you remember at the start of the month, he came up short against Nasruddin Imavov. Is Izzy done? I personally don't think he is. I think he has shown enough in the fights that he has lost, and that sounds a little bit baffling because the Sean Strickland fight was just so far off the pace. But against Dricus, he looked good in pockets. First 5 minutes against Imavov, he wins that. He loses, obviously, with a daft mistake. Maybe he should have just taken a breath off the eye poke, I don't know, or the groin strike, whatever it was, that foul. I think there's one more top contender fight in Israel Adesanya to really find out whether he's still got it. Maybe that comes against Anthony Hernandez, who looked absolutely brilliant against Brendan Allen. Yes, he lost the first 5 minutes, but he was having none of it for the next 10. He ragdolled him all over the place and really poked himself forward as a top contender in that division. Maybe that is the fight to make going forward. Also coming off the back of that Saudi Arabian card, what next for Michael Venom Page? It's now time, innit, kids? Let's do the Wonder Boy fight. Why not? He's here for fun. That was brilliant against Shara Bullet. Let's not go crazy about it. He can float between two weight divisions. I personally think making the Wonder Boy fight right now would be the perfect thing for MVP. Let's get that on. The other big talking points coming off the back of February is what do we do with the winners of the championship fights? Well, I think it's obvious. Dricus du Plessis, he took care of Sean Strickland in brilliant fashion. He was just far superior to him. The only fight for me that I want to see is him versus Khamzat Chimaev with the top contender fight of Kyle Borralho taking on Nasruddin Imavov. I think we've got a real good pathway now at 185, and it's going to be exciting over the next 12 months with those four fighters having some real quality, high-level middleweight fights against each other. I'm a little disappointed that they've already announced Manon Fiorot to take on Valentina Shevchenko. It does make sense for the division. It's absolutely the right fight to do. But be honest, after watching Zhang Weili, you really want her to step up and take on Shevchenko in a super fight. That's the one that we all want to see. So whatever happens between Fiorot and Shevchenko, I hope that Weili's next fight is in the weight division above, because I just don't think there's any contenders for her in her current division. I did tell you at the start of the month that Youssef Zalal is the man to keep an eye on. You saw his interview on this very channel. How good was he? And how good was he in that performance in his first co-main event? He was absolutely fantastic. Yes, he frustrated the living daylights out of Calvin Kattar, and you might say, well, he ran away for 5 minutes at the end. But what did he do for the first 10? He was absolutely brilliant. He outstruck Gaethje in every single round and thoroughly deserves moving forward in this division as one of the top contenders. Don't forget, we've got a big preview of UFC 313 coming your way. Laura and Dean are going to give you the big title fight breakdown. I'm hopefully going to be speaking to somebody connected to the main card and bringing you that on the channel next week. So make sure you like and subscribe to the channel here, where we are getting you closer to the very best mixed martial arts in the world. I'll give you a full rundown of what is to come in the month of March as we head towards UFC London and Leon Edwards taking on the new opponent of Sean Brady. Big preview of that coming your way very, very soon. But for now, thanks very much for tuning in. I'll catch you next time.